Hello and welcome back, you beautiful people. I'm your host D, also known as MTF Doom, and today, many Marvel the Snappening players ask the question, should I hold or pass priority? I hope you enjoy. So, I've gotten this request multiple times by multiple people, most recently, and so credit explicitly will be given to Grackle Flint again of Discord. This could be you, but you playing. You could be in Discord right now asking me questions so that I make videos basically answering your question, but you're not, and that's a problem. So hit the subscribe button, join the Discord, help us get to 1 million, and I will be forever appreciative. All right. The question is, how does priority work? Do I want it, or do I want my opponent to have it? It's a big long question that lots of other people have deep dived into, and the answer is not yes or no, right? It's not an easy answer to give. So if you don't know, priority just dictates who reveals first, whose cards flip up. And it is dictated by who is winning, by explicit numbers currently. That is to say, if you are ahead on power on 2 locations, your cards will reveal first. Therefore, we can infer that in general, the game thinks of this as kind of a disadvantage, right? It wouldn't give an advantage to the winning player, but in general, it is also kind of neutral. It depends a lot on the tech cards that you are playing, and you can get better at understanding whether you should vie for priority or try to play from behind based on which tech cards, if any, or what type of deck you are playing, okay? So if you want priority, if you are playing cards like these, right? Basically, if you're trying to protect your own stuff, right? So if you think that they're going to Shang you or Killmonger, you want priority so that you can armor. Same with Cosmo, right? If you think they're going to try to do a big on reveal play, you want priority so that you can Cosmo that play, right? Makes sense. Same, we're seeing a pattern here. Same with Wong, right? If you're playing a Wong deck, you want to do your thing before they can Cosmo you, assuming they haven't already, which is not a safe assumption. They probably Cosmoed you already, and then you retreated. These are a little iffier, but in general, unless you have a way of clearing out a spot and you can be sneaky with Hobgoblin, then you want priority because you don't want to risk them flipping up a card that actually adds multiple cards. You know, you like a Sinister or a Brood. It's not the most likely scenario, but in general, it is slightly more play points to play this with prio than without. And same with Professor X. If they, if they're playing something in a different, if they play a Doom in a different lane, they can't add the Doombot here, which is cool. It's great. Big fan. And then I've put Magneto. In general, I think Magneto, you want priority because you're playing him on turn 6. Again, in general, there's a lot of nuance to this, but in general, cards like this, you know what you're pulling. You're moving their 3 and 4 cost cards. You know what cards those are. You're basically playing this to disrupt what they're doing, their game plan. You're trying to get rid of it. He's more on the agnostic side, but I think he has slightly more utility with priority than without. But again, if you foresee them playing a Maximus and a Cosmo on turn 6, something like that, and you want to move those, keep that in mind. Oh, they're going to play out 10 power here. If I just move all of that into one lane and give up that lane, I'll win. But you have to keep in mind whether or not you have priority, right? And so I think by the time you're playing him, you kind of know what you're pulling, but he can lose you games. I've won quite a few games to my opponent not really thinking about what Magneto was going to move and being like, oh, yeah, I pulled their bishop, but that lost me the game because bishop beat Magneto on his own. Fuck. Damn, that's a huge bishop. All right. So these are the types of things you want with priority, right? So then, well, what about if you're playing from behind? Like, quote unquote, control decks, right? The simplest idea is like Shang on 6, giving your opponent all the time in the world to have deployed the most 9+ power cards can be backbreaking. It can be. Not always, but, you know, can be. Same with Enchantress, like just it being the last thing that flips up, so you've like kind of given your opponent all the time in the world to do whatever you want to play another Devil Dino? Yeah, by all means, like you're gonna like copy that? Yep, all right, I'll take that too. Enchantress does flip-flop because we talked about like the Wong wanting priority. Enchantress wants priority over Wong, and again is the sort of the most agnostic on this list, but in general your use cases flip more with Enchantress. But you know, if you're shutting down stuff like dinos, you can give them all the Dino and Dark Hawk, even like armor. Armor's like very agnostic. If you're Enchantressing their armor, you're happy whenever it goes off, as long as it's not turn 6, so that you can do other stuff. But yeah, so Enchantress is like pretty agnostic, but I think slightly better behind. Stuff like anything that reduces power is better from behind because it gives your opponent more time for their cards to flip up. Just, you know, face down cards do not get afflicted with -1 power by Spider-Woman. Just if you didn't know that, now you know. So if you're behind, their cards flip up first and then you get more play points. The one you're probably more likely to have played is Hazmat. Again, Hazmat without Luke Cage is much, much, much better revealing second than revealing first. I'd say possibly unplayable revealing first, and some play points revealing second without Luke Cage. But really, you kind of need Luke Cage in a lot of senses. Even, and this one's gonna seem funny, Scorpion is slightly better from behind, because if your opponent played a Sentinel or a Hood or something that added a card to their hand, that now gets -1 power. It's very minor, but it is very slightly better while playing from behind, just so we're all clear. And then obviously, you know, if you've played a Zoo deck, you know how bad it is for your opponent to be behind on turn 6. Like, you really want to be behind because you really, really want all your 1-drops to survive, and Killmonger's going to make sure that doesn't happen. Killmonger, also, as we covered in yesterday's video, pretty good right now. So be especially careful out there, Zoo friends. Hold your loved ones tight tonight, okay? Hold your loved 1-drops tight. All right, and then we've got priority agnostic type cards. So, like, I guess technically Iceman falls in the Lizard or Scorpion category of, like, being slightly better second, because you can hit their new you could hit their new Sentinel or their Demon or whatever. But in general, very much an agnostic priority card. Like, if you're just playing it out, it's good no matter kind of what you hit, because that effect is really good. Same with Korg. In general, these are just good early. It doesn't really matter. Goose won't stop them if they've already played a 4, 5, or 6, so it doesn't really matter. I guess on a very, very technical note, it's better without priority, because if they happen to play an Enchantress the same turn you play a Goose, you don't want it getting Enchantress, but it's very minor. That's why it's in the agnostic category. Scarlet Witch, it depends on the location you're trying to change, right? Like, if you're trying to change a neutral location, then it doesn't really matter. If you are changing out like a Death's Domain, or something that destroys units or whatever, in general, not having prio is better, because it means your opponent, like, if it's like Danger Room, your opponent like can commit and take that 25% chance of getting destroyed, and like maybe get destroyed, and then you can Scarlet Witch and be like, all right, well, the witch is always safe. So but because of that, it'll flip-flop whether you want priority or not. Same with Rhino. And then I know the other movement card, Magneto, I put as like want prio. And these are more agnostic, and I already said Magneto was pretty priority agnostic. I'd say because these are generally not, you don't necessarily know what you're going to move, it's harder to gauge whether you want priority or not. Sometimes, like with Juggernaut, if Juggernaut is like the tech card that you have in your hand and your opponent has a Wong out, you're like, okay, well, it's turn 6. I have priority, and I have a Juggernaut, and my opponent has a Wong. You know you're in a good spot because, like, you know they're going to try to utilize that Wong, and you're just going to, like, move the cards before they flip up. Something like Polaris, you know, on turn 6, you might have a pretty good grasp of what you're going to move. Like, they might only have 1 or 2, you know, 1 cost. But earlier, it can be a little harder to, like, gauge whether you want priority or you want to give them the opportunity to, like, flip another 1 cost up and then move that into a lane that they've already committed something, and it can get a little messier. So these are maybe the harder to utilize versions of movement cards, which is why, you know, why they're here. But so all this in mind, do you want priority or not? Yes, no, and all of the above. The point is, the answer to that question relies heavily on what type of tech you're playing. And I would say a successful deck might even have lots. You might want to split the types of, unless you, okay, all right. in order of thoughts. You probably are best off having some tech that is good ahead or behind, unless your deck is one that you know will always be one of those situations or the other. So, like, the Bishop deck that I play is, in general, usually ahead, because it's deploying very, very, like, even stats for most of the game. It's a constant onslaught of ever-increasing numbers that your opponent is supposed to get overwhelmed by. Like, you know, that's the nature of that deck. It's also kind of sneaky. You know, technically Mysterio has 0 power for a long time. Hood has -2, but you're really not leaving them on the board for very long in general, because you need to keep making space for new stuff to get added. So, in general, you will have priority, and so in general, you know, if I cared that much about my opponent destroying my stuff, which I kind of don't, because it's mostly like a bunch of cards that hit like 6 or 8 power, but not necessarily a bunch that hit 9 to get shanged, we would play stuff like this. But in general, in that deck, I play a lot of stuff like this. I much prefer cards that can be utilized ahead or behind in general, right? And so we love, you've seen how much I love, like, Polaris, right? How much I love Scarlet Witch. Best card you could be playing right now, Scarlet Witch, by the way. If you're a deck that's not deploying a lot of power, if you're like, I don't know, the Dracula deck, right? Where, like, some of your cards, like, your 4-drops have 0 power, technically, for a long time. Stuff like, you know, I don't know, what else plays from behind? I don't have that good of an understanding of those types of decks. I don't, like, generally play them. I really love mid-range decks. So I really love just deploying stats. Very smooth brain player over here. That's it. That's the whole takeaway. The takeaway is, know the type of deck you're playing, know what your options really are for tech cards, and probably include more of them that are, like, you know, priority agnostic, like I said, that you can do interesting things with. Because that's, you know, one of the best things about this game is that it really does reward interesting play on the player's part. It really does reward players going like, oh, wow, I've never seen that interaction before. I never considered how these 2 locations with this card and that card on their side will all interact together. I had a game earlier today. I was complaining about this in Discord because I wasn't recording when it came up, but there was a Nexus and then a bar with no name as the second location, and then just some third location. I think the one where like cards aren't revealed this turn. It was like a nothing burger location. But the point is, that was the only location that mattered, because if you won the Nexus, you automatically lost bar with no name, right? Like by virtue of winning the Nexus. So you were always going to win one, lose the other, and then the only thing that would matter was the last location, right? And so you could like overkill the Nexus so that you could get all that power added. So basically my opponent and I are both fighting over the left and right. And I realize that I'm in a position where, so they've filled the left up. They're going to go right. I kind of know they're going to dino it and just like, do a big devil dino, like Moon Girl type stuff. And so I like see what's going to happen. And I realize I can win the left lane by exactly 1 power. And so I do that and then deploy the hood to the bar with no name, which gives -2 power. So I end up winning that location. Even though I won the Nexus, I also won bar with no name by 1 point. and ended up winning the game because of it. And completely disregarded the right side, which my opponent very rightly thought was what was going to determine the game in total. So that was just a really cool moment, and it really rewarded interesting play patterns that you might not have like considered in a lot of ways. So just keep all that in mind when you're making your tech choices and your priority choices. Keep all of that in mind. And if you have any further questions, like I said, join the Discord. If you find this content elucidating, enlightening, or enriching, the best way to let me know is with a subscribe and a comment. And I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.